The suitcase split open the moment it hit the pavement. Clothes burst out into the stormwater, soft cotton, lace, and something silk that darkened instantly in the October rain. The sound echoed like a gunshot against the quiet suburban street. "Get out!" Marcus Hale roared, his voice raw, his hands still raised from the throw. Lightning split the sky above the narrow two-story house he had bought on a suffocating 30-year mortgage. Rain hammered down in silver sheets, soaking the driveway, plastering fabric to skin. Lila stood at the bottom of the steps, one hand cradling her 6-month pregnant belly. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She simply watched. Behind Marcus, Serena Vale leaned lazily against the doorframe, her manicured fingers curled around his arm, her red lipstick bright against the gloom. "Oh my God, Marcus," she laughed softly. "She's not even fighting for you. That's pathetic." Lila's dress clung to her swollen stomach. Her dark hair, once carefully braided that morning, hung loose and heavy with rain. For 3 years she had played the role perfectly: drugstore mascara, thrift store sweaters, careful coupon clipping, quiet dinners. Never once mentioning the trust fund that earned more interest in a day than Marcus's salary as a mid-level consultant. 3 years of watching. 3 years of waiting. 3 years of giving kindness every possible chance to survive. The front door creaked again. Finally, came the sharp voice of Marcus's mother, Evelyn Hale. Evelyn descended the porch steps like royalty stepping into exile. Her tailored coat, her pearl earrings, her thin mouth twisted in disdain. "I knew you were never right for my son," Evelyn spat. "No pedigree. No ambition. No class." Marcus felt a flicker of discomfort, but he said nothing. He never did. Lila's eyes moved to him then. Not angry. Not broken. Measuring. Evelyn stopped inches from her. "You trapped him with that baby," she hissed. And then she spat. The rain didn't wash it away fast enough. The world held its breath. Marcus's stomach dropped. He should say something. He should move. He should. Lila smiled. It was small. Calm. Almost pitying. She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. Then she reached into her soaked pocket and pulled out a phone Marcus had never seen before, sleek, matte black, impossibly expensive. She lifted it to her ear. "Dad," she said gently. "It's time." Evelyn's color drained so quickly Marcus thought she might faint. The rain softened into a hiss. Marcus swallowed. "Lila, what are you doing?" She didn't answer him. 17 months ago, she continued into the phone, her voice steady. "You asked how long I wanted to test them. I think we're done." Serena's grip tightened. "Test? What test?" Lila finally looked at Marcus. "You never asked about my last name," she said quietly. "You never cared." Her tone wasn't cruel. That made it worse. "What are you talking about?" Marcus snapped. Headlights turned onto the street. 1, 2, 3. 4 black SUVs glided through the rain like silent predators. The first parked in the driveway. The second and third sealed off the curb. The fourth, a polished obsidian Bentley, stopped directly in front of the house. The engines cut in perfect synchronization. Evelyn's hands began to shake violently. "No," she whispered. "No, that can't be." Umbrellas snapped open. Security in dark suits moved with military precision. And then the rear door of the Bentley opened. A tall, silver-haired man stepped out. Immaculate suit. Calm eyes. Presence that seemed to bend the air. Arthur Calloway. Industrial magnate. Philanthropist. Billionaire. Owner of half the skyline downtown. Lila Calloway. Marcus felt the ground tilt. Arthur didn't look at Marcus. He walked straight to his daughter. "You're soaked," he said softly, anger simmering beneath composure. "The baby's fine," Lila replied. "Baby." Arthur's jaw flexed. Evelyn dropped to the steps, clutching the railing. You're Calloway's daughter?" Marcus croaked. Lila's gaze met his. "You never asked." Arthur finally turned. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You are Marcus Hale." It wasn't a question. Marcus tried to straighten. "Sir, this is a misunderstanding." "Did your mother," Arthur asked calmly, "or did she not spit on my pregnant daughter?" Silence. Rain tapping against umbrellas. Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Arthur nodded once. "I thought so." He pulled a folder from his assistant. "Your mortgage," Arthur continued conversationally, "is owned by a subsidiary of Calloway Holdings. Your employer, Strappridge Consulting, was acquired 8 months ago. Your promotion? My daughter recommended it." Marcus blinked. Serena's nails dug into his arm. Arthur flipped a page. Credit card debt, $52,300. Cash withdrawals funding an apartment for Miss Serena Vale. Serena stepped back as if slapped. "How?" Marcus whispered. "Lila has an MBA in finance," Arthur replied coolly. "Did you believe she didn't notice?" Lila spoke then. "I found out about Serena 3 weeks after you met her." Marcus's heart pounded. "Why didn't you say anything?" he choked. "Because I wanted to see who you would choose," she answered. Arthur's gaze hardened. "You're terminated effective immediately. You have 72 hours to vacate this property." Evelyn sobbed. "Country club membership revoked," Arthur continued. "Charity board position?" Concluded. Everything Marcus believed stable collapsed in under 5 minutes. Security gathered Lila's luggage. Arthur placed a protective hand at her back. "There's one more thing," Lila said softly. She stepped closer to Marcus. "For 3 years," she said, voice trembling just slightly, "I hoped you'd remember the man who smiled at me in that classroom when neither of us had anything." Her hand moved to her belly. "Tonight you chose pride over love." Marcus's chest tightened painfully. "Lila, please." She shook her head. "You stood there." Arthur guided her toward the Bentley. The convoy disappeared into the rain. Marcus dropped to his knees in the driveway, the red recording light of the doorbell camera blinking steadily. And for the first time in his life, he understood fear. If you're feeling the weight of that moment, if you've ever watched someone realize too late what they've lost, pause right here. Share this story. Subscribe. Because what happens next changes everything. 7 months later, Lila sat in a modest pediatric clinic in Ashford, Oregon, her 3-month-old daughter sleeping in her arms. No designer labels. No chauffeur. Just a simple sweater and quiet peace. Her name here was Lila Moreno. She had stepped away from the Calloway name. She needed to know something. Could someone love her without the empire attached? The nurse called her name. As she stood, raised voices drifted from reception. "I'm sorry, sir, without insurance." "My daughter's fever is 103, a man pleaded. Lila paused. A tall man in worn denim held a little girl burning with fever against his chest. Desperation radiated off him. Something inside Lila stirred. She stepped forward. "I'll cover it." The man looked stunned. "You don't even know us." "I know she needs help," Lila said quietly. His name was Ethan Brooks. Middle school science teacher. Widower. His daughter, Mia, clung to him weakly. As the doctor took Mia inside, Ethan whispered, "I'll pay you back." "Just pay it forward," Lila said. He studied her carefully. "You've been hurt," he said softly. Lila blinked. "Bad marriage?" She gave a faint laugh. "Something like that." Outside, he offered coffee. At Harbor and Page bookstore. Lila's heart fluttered. She worked there. Tomorrow at 9:30. As she drove home, something inside her felt lighter. For the first time since the rain. There was possibility. And she had no idea this quiet teacher was about to face a test far greater than he realized. The next morning, the bell above the door of Harbor and Page chimed at exactly 9:28 a.m. Lila was already there. She had chosen the small round table by the window, sunlight spilling across its scratched wooden surface. Outside, Ashford streets glowed from last night's rain, maple leaves plastered against sidewalks like torn confetti. She checked her reflection in the cafe's pastry case glass. Simple jeans. Cream sweater. Hair in a loose ponytail. Not Lila Calloway. Just Lila Moreno. The door opened again. Ethan stepped in, Mia's small hand wrapped around his finger. He looked slightly nervous, clean flannel, hair still damp from a rushed shower. When he spotted Lila, his face changed. Warm. Relieved. Almost shy. "There's our hero," he said softly to Mia. Lila smiled. "Good morning." "Fever broke at 2 a.m., Ethan said. "Antibiotics working." Mia held up a small plastic dinosaur. "Rawr." Lila gasped playfully. "Is that a T-Rex?" Mia nodded solemnly. Ethan laughed, and the sound did something to Lila's chest, something steady, something grounding. They ordered coffee and hot chocolate. Conversation came easily. He talked about teaching science, about trying to convince 12-year-olds that volcanoes were cooler than video games. About grading papers past midnight. "I don't make much," he admitted, stirring his coffee. "But I love it. Kids deserve someone who believes in them." Lila watched him carefully. No performance. No calculation. Just truth. "What about you?" he asked. "Bookstore forever?" "For now," she said. He tilted his head. "That sounds like there's more." She hesitated. There it was, the test beginning quietly. "I used to live a different life," she admitted. "One with expectations." "Family expectations?" he guessed. "Something like that." He nodded slowly. "After my wife died, everyone had expectations too," he said. "Move on quickly. Stay strong. Don't fall apart. But grief doesn't follow schedules." His honesty was disarming. Lila swallowed. "Did you ever feel invisible?" she asked. "All the time," Ethan replied instantly. "Especially when Mia got sick. It's like the world only sees your paperwork, not your panic." That hit deep. She remembered the rain. The spit on her cheek. Marcus standing there. She pushed the memory away. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "I don't know what you walked away from," he said gently. "But whatever it was, I hope it didn't convince you that you're hard to love." Her breath caught. That sentence alone would have shattered Marcus. Before she could respond, Mia tugged on Ethan's sleeve. "Daddy, bathroom." He laughed apologetically. Single dad life. Lila watched him scoop Mia up effortlessly. No irritation. No resentment. Just devotion. When he returned, he pulled out his wallet. "Let me at least pay for today." "You don't have to." "I want to," he insisted. "It matters." She let him. Because it did matter. Over the next weeks, coffee became walks. Walks became dinners. Dinners became evenings reading stories to both girls sprawled on the living room floor of Lila's modest apartment. Sophia gurgled in Ethan's arms one night, tiny fingers gripping his thumb. "You sure you're okay with all this?" he asked quietly. "With what?" "Me. Mia. My very average life." She looked at him carefully. "Average doesn't scare me." "What does?" "Pretending." He nodded, understanding more than she'd explained. Months passed. Lila felt something rebuilding inside her. Trust. Laughter. Hope. And then came the turning point. It happened on a Tuesday evening. Lila arrived at Ethan's apartment with takeout Thai food balanced on one arm and Sophia on her hip. The door was ajar. Inside, voices were raised. "I said I need 2 more weeks." Ethan's voice, tight, strained. A harsh male voice replied, "Rent's late again." "I've been patient." Lila froze. "Landlord." Ethan stepped into view, rubbing his forehead. "We had medical bills," he said quietly. "I'm catching up." "You've got 5 days," the landlord snapped. The door shut. Silence filled the room. Ethan turned and saw her. Shame flickered across his face. "You weren't supposed to hear that." Lila set the food down slowly. "How much?" she asked. "Lila." "How much?" 800. She could cover it without blinking. But this was the test. If she paid again, would it change something? He looked exhausted. "I'll figure it out," he said. "I always do." That night, after the girls slept, Ethan sat on the couch staring at a spreadsheet on his laptop. She watched him silently. "You don't have to carry everything alone," she said softly. "I do," he replied. "It's my job." "Even if someone wants to help?" He looked up at her. "I don't ever want you to feel like you owe me something." The sincerity in that statement cracked something open inside her. She realized. He wasn't with her for rescue. He was with her for partnership. That realization hit like a high cliff edge. And right here. If you've ever wondered whether real love still exists, this is your moment. Subscribe. Share this story. Because what happens next will test everything. 2 weeks later, Ethan showed up at the bookstore holding a small velvet box. Lila's pulse spiked. "Walk with me?" he asked. They left the girls with a trusted neighbor. The evening air was crisp. They stopped beneath the amber glow of a street lamp. "I was going to plan something bigger," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "But life doesn't wait for perfect timing." He dropped to one knee. Lila's breath left her lungs. "I don't have much," he said honestly. "But I have love. I have commitment. I have a promise that I'll never stand silent while someone hurts you." Her chest tightened. "I love you," he continued. "And I want to build something steady. With you. With the girls. Even if it's small." Tears blurred her vision. Before she answered, she had to tell him. "Ethan," she whispered. "There's something you don't know." He stilled. "My real name isn't Moreno." He frowned slightly. She pulled out her phone. Scrolled. Turned the screen toward him. A photo. A gala. A younger version of herself between Arthur and Vivian Calloway. Headlines. Calloway heir. Ethan blinked. "That's my father," she said quietly. "Arthur Calloway." Silence fell thick between them. Wind rustled leaves. "You're wealthy?" he asked slowly. Yes. How wealthy? Enough that rent wouldn't exist as a concept. He stood slowly, the ring box still open in his hand. How long? He asked. Since before we met. Hurt flickered in his eyes. You've been testing me. No. Have I just been another experiment? He demanded, voice tight but controlled. Pain pierced her. My first husband humiliated me publicly when I was pregnant, she said, voice shaking. I needed to know someone could love me without knowing what I came with. And you couldn't just tell me? I was afraid. He turned away, breathing hard. You think I'm like him? No. Then why treat me like I might be? The question hung heavy. She stepped closer. Because fear makes you irrational, she whispered. And I was terrified of choosing wrong again. Ethan closed his eyes. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then finally, I don't want your money, he said quietly. I know. But I do want honesty. You have it now. He looked at the ring in his hand. I fell in love with a bookstore clerk who bought strangers coffee and made dinosaur noises, he said. Not a billionaire. That woman is still me. Silence again. Then slowly. A small smile. Good, he said. Because she's the one I'm asking. He dropped back to one knee. Lila, whatever your last name is, will you marry me? She laughed through tears. Yes. He slid the ring onto her finger. Simple. Earned. Real. And in that quiet Ashford Street, love proved itself stronger than fear. The morning after the proposal, Lila woke before dawn. For a moment, she simply lay there, staring at the ceiling of her small Ashford apartment, the early blue light stretching across the room. Her hand lifted slowly. The ring caught the faint sunrise. Simple gold band. Modest diamond. 3 months of Ethan's careful saving. Not a Callaway heirloom. Not custom designed by a Paris jeweler. And somehow, it meant more. Sophia stirred in the bassinet beside the bed, making soft sleepy sounds. From the living room came the quiet murmur of cartoons, Mia already awake, whispering to keep from disturbing them. Lila exhaled. Peace. Real peace. Not the curated perfection of charity galas and boardrooms. Not the suffocating silence of a marriage where love had evaporated. Just this. Tiny apartment. Sticky cereal bowls. Second-hand couch. Love. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Dad. She smiled faintly and answered. You're up early, Arthur Callaway's deep voice filled the room. I'm engaged, she said simply. There was a pause. Then a slow inhale. To the teacher. Yes. Another pause. Does he know? Arthur asked. Yes. And? He proposed anyway. Silence again, but softer this time. I'd like to meet him properly, Arthur said. He's not a merger opportunity, Dad. A low chuckle rumbled through the phone. I'm aware. But any man marrying my daughter deserves at least one intimidating dinner. She rolled her eyes, smiling. He's not afraid of wealth. He should be a little afraid of me, Arthur replied dryly. Later that week, Ethan stood in front of the Callaway estate gates for the first time. The ironwork alone probably cost more than his annual salary. He wore his best suit. The one he used for parent-teacher conferences and funerals. Lila squeezed his hand. You don't have to prove anything, she whispered. I know, he replied. But I will. The gates opened. The estate stretched beyond like something out of a film, stone architecture, manicured gardens, fountains whispering in the sunlight. Ethan let out a quiet breath. That's excessive. She laughed. Welcome to my childhood. Inside, Arthur stood waiting in a tailored navy suit. Beside him, Vivian Calloway, elegant but warm-eyed. Ethan stepped forward. Sir. Ma'am. Arthur extended a hand. His grip was firm. Measured. I've read about you, Arthur said calmly. Ethan didn't flinch. I imagine you have. And yet you're still here. Yes, sir. Arthur studied him. Why? Ethan glanced at Lila. Then back at Arthur. Because your daughter once paid for my daughter's medical bill when I couldn't. Because she makes Sophia laugh. Because she listens when I talk about volcanoes like they're breaking news. Arthur's eyebrow lifted slightly. And if marrying her means stepping into a world of influence, scrutiny, expectation? Ethan shrugged lightly. Then I'll keep teaching science. The rest is background noise. Vivian smiled faintly. Arthur's stare lingered. Then. He nodded once. Dinner. Over the next hour, Arthur asked direct questions. About finances. Values. Intentions. Ethan answered plainly. No embellishment. No groveling. I don't need your money, Ethan said at one point, calmly. But I won't insult your daughter by pretending it doesn't exist either. If she chooses to use it to create good in the world, I'll stand beside her. Arthur leaned back in his chair. You're aware I could fund your school for the next 50 years. I'm aware, Ethan replied. And I'd still show up at 7 a.m. to teach. Silence. Then, for the first time, Arthur smiled. After dinner, as the girls played in the garden with Vivian, Arthur pulled Lila aside. He's not intimidated, Arthur said quietly. No. He's not dazzled either. No. Arthur nodded slowly. Good. 6 months later, their wedding took place at the Calloway estate, but it didn't look like a society spectacle. Wildflowers lined the aisle. Mia insisted on scattering petals unevenly. Sophia toddled between chairs in a tiny white dress. Ethan stood at the altar, hands slightly shaking. When Lila walked toward him, sunlight catching in her hair, he didn't see a billionaire heiress. He saw the woman who sat across from him in a bookstore cafe and said, just pay it forward. Arthur placed her hand in Ethan's. Take care of her, Arthur said quietly. With everything I have, Ethan replied. The vows were simple. Promises of partnership. Of speaking up. Of never standing silent when cruelty appeared. When Ethan kissed her, applause rippled across the garden. Not because of wealth. But because of something rare. Something earned. 3 years later, Lila stood inside the newly opened Moreno Brooks Community Health Center. The sign outside read, funded by the Calloway Foundation. In partnership with Ashford Public Schools. The idea had been born from that pediatric clinic moment. From Ethan's desperation. From a system that nearly turned away a sick child. Now, families without insurance filled the bright waiting room. Doctors volunteered time. Teachers received healthcare credits. Children laughed in hallways painted with dinosaurs. Ethan walked up beside her, slipping an arm around her waist. You built this, he said softly. We built this, she corrected. Across the room, Mia, now 8, helped Sophia, age 3, color a mural. Arthur stood near the entrance speaking with city officials. Vivian handed out juice boxes. Marcus Hale watched the news coverage from a small television mounted in the break room of the car dealership where he now worked. He barely recognized the woman on screen. Radiant. Confident. Alive. Beside her stood a man who looked at her like she was the only thing in the world. Marcus muted the TV. Silence filled the room. He remembered the rain. The spit. The smile she gave him before she walked away. Regret was a heavy thing. But Lila never thought of him anymore. That chapter had closed the night she chose dignity over humiliation. Later that evening, after the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Ethan found Lila alone in her office. On the wall hung a framed photograph. A still image from that pediatric clinic security camera years ago. Lila holding baby Sophia. Ethan holding feverish Mia. Two strangers. One decision. One act of kindness. You kept it, he said quietly. It's where everything changed, she replied. He stepped closer. No, he said softly. Everything changed the night you decided you deserved better. She turned toward him. And everything healed the day I met someone who didn't need to be tested. He smiled. I'm glad I passed. You didn't pass, she corrected gently. You just showed up as yourself. Sophia's laughter echoed down the hallway. Mia called out, Dad! Mom! Come see! They walked out together. Past doctors and teachers and families who now had access to care because one desperate father once asked for help. Because one woman once chose kindness instead of bitterness. Outside, the sunset bathed the building in gold. Lila squeezed Ethan's hand. She had once stood in the rain, humiliated and discarded. Now she stood in light, surrounded by love she didn't have to test. Some tests were necessary. Some losses were blessings. And sometimes, the greatest wealth wasn't inheritance. It was choosing the right person when it mattered most. If this story reminded you that kindness still exists, that real love doesn't require performance, share it. Subscribe. Because somewhere right now, someone is standing in the rain, and they need to know there's light on the other side. And Lila Moreno Brooks, once Lila Calloway, never stood in the rain alone again.